This chapter is another one that is light on the story. After fighting through hordes of enemies, Payne catches up with Gognitti and learns that Lupino has holed up in the local club called Ragnarok. Rather than kill him, Payne leaves him to bleed out in the alley. At this point, the difficulty ramps up significantly for me. The terrain mostly takes place outside, and the enemy placement is chaotic. Multiple times I felt myself being shot at, and I could not locate the shooter. Mixed with the almost non-existent painkiller drops, this chapter gave me more deaths than the rest of the game combined. Grenade throws were always in small hallways, and detonated so quickly that even if I noticed them, I couldn't run away fast enough. It got to the point where I had to learn the exact trigger line for the grenade throw, trip it, and run back before the toss animation even occurred. This was entirely trial and error for me, and I admittedly grew frustrated before abusing the save feature to get through some of the encounters. At long last, my hypothesis regarding Fimbulvetter and Ragnarok had somewhat been confirmed. As Gognitti snitches on Lupino, he informs Payne he is hiding at a club called Ragnarok. That is about as explicit as it can get. The biggest takeaway from the final conversation is the nature of the game that criminals and police have with one another. Criminals can brutalize and break the rules without conscious thought. However, law enforcement is required to play only by the rules in order to counter them. A law-abiding police force is what maintains our civilized society, otherwise the streets would be pure chaos. However, it is playing a game where each participant plays by different rules. As Gognitti shows off, criminals expect to be handled with kids' gloves, even though they don't treat others that way. He quickly shows that criminals don't know how to handle themselves when Payne is let off the leash, and no longer plays by the rules of a civilized society. Taking a direction I did not anticipate, it is revealed that Lupino fancies himself a mystic and studies occult literature. Traveling through Ragnarok, Payne reveals more of the mobster's mindset. Platforming aspects come into play within this chapter: tight walk spaces, breakable floors, and hopping over gaps. The difficulty stayed high for me, but I began to grow acclimated to the enemy placement and techniques to deal with it. To be honest, I did not expect the story to take a turn to the occult. I'm curious to what extent his fascination takes him. Looking at the books on the altar, I got somewhat of an idea. Paradise Lost by John Milton is a story of the angelic civil war, Lucifer, and the banishment from Eden. The Necronomicon is a collection of illustrations and writings placed within the coffin or burial chamber of the deceased. It effectively was a guidebook that assisted the soul, or Ka, of the dead with its path through the afterlife. The original Egyptian title, when translated to English, is the Book of Emerging Forth into the Light. Malleus Maleficarum was written in the 15th century by a member of the Catholic clergy and was used as the template to identify and prosecute witches. Later, it was seen as a compendium of demonology. Unlike the previous books, De Umbrarum Regni Novum Portus, or The Nine Doors to the Kingdom of Shadows, is fictional. The Club du Mas is a 1993 novel that dealt with a book dealer who was brought to authenticate the manuscript. The author was reported to have been burned at the stake after writing it, and based his work off of the Della Melanicon, or The Invocation of Shadow. It was rumored to have been a guide to summon devils, and written by Lucifer himself. The 1999 film starring Johnny Depp entitled The Ninth Gate is loosely based upon this novel. Due to the wide variety of topics within these books, it appears Lupino is studying these topics with no specific theme in mind. He is simply studying everything. While the conclusion of the first sub-arc of the game is short, it is very information-dense. It is revealed at the start that Lupino's recent studies do not sit well with the Mafia Don. Punchinello goes so far as to threaten to take him out if he doesn't get a grip on himself. Walking over the bodies of sacrifices, the memos showed just how far gone Jack has become. Having left prayers to dark mythological, chthonic, and religious entities, Payne comments that he's attempting to trade his soul for power. Overhearing his rambling, the man sounds insane, and when he is confronted, Lupino is jacked up on Valkyr. After Payne put him down for good, a brunette with a gun walks in and points the gun at Payne's head. There's not much to say on the gameplay here other than comment on some design choices. This is not unique to this game, but I enjoy when characters have dialogue while the player is walking around. Sneaking up the rear hallway while listening to Lupino rant, the lighting effects, and the level design, it really amped me up for the final fight. For the boss fight with Jack, let's just say I was restarting over and over until I got through the seemingly endless waves leading up to the curtain opening and the real boss walking out. I have to give credit to Lupino's voice actor. His cadence and inflection really sold the characterization of a man who had fallen into the pit of insanity. Several times, Lupino refers to himself as a wolf in the likeness of Gognitti, who catch and consume the sun and the moon during Ragnarok. His surname Lupino is even a reference to this. The prefix lup is from lupus, the Latin word for wolf. The suffix ino is a diminutive add-on in Italian which can mark the difference between the size or age of something, such as a boulder versus a pebble, or being an adult versus a child. If lupus is wolf, then Lupino means the young wolf or the little wolf. Thematically, Payne has a line of dialogue near the start that confirms my belief that the story follows his personal Ragnarok, the end of his personal world. This chapter solidified Lupino's characterization for me. While it is easy to say he is simply insane, there is more to it than that. Jack came off to me like an initiate who was promoted far too early. It takes time to make the mind ready for certain information. We would not take a kid in 2nd grade and force them to study multivariable calculus or aerospace engineering. It can take decades of study, starting with the ABCs and 1+1, before our mind is ready for that kind of information. Lupino comes off to me like he had too much occult information dropped on him all at once, and his mind couldn't handle it. This lack of preparation led to his psychological break.